Now's your chance to set the tone, to build trust, and to get all the information that you need to work effectively with your providers. So knowing exactly what to talk about will ensure a smooth working relationship from the beginning. Today is day 12 of our series, From Medical Biller to Billing Business Owner, Balancing Work and Entrepreneurship. And could you imagine talking to a provider in an interview, asking lots of questions, and then walking away feeling sure about yourself, getting all your questions answered, and having no misunderstandings? That would be the perfect consultation. And that is what we are aiming for when we have these provider consultations. So you do need to remember that this is not just a meet and greet. We're not just going into these meetings to say, hi, I'm your biller, or I want to be your biller and you're the provider, and seeing what each other looks like. We need to make sure that we cover such things as scope of work, payments, services, expectations. But today I'm going to be talking about understanding the provider's needs and their goals. Now I want you to remember two things. I'm going to go over a list of questions that you can ask the providers, but always remember that you will probably have to ask follow-up questions to those questions. So you might ask a set of questions, they answer, and then it would prompt you to ask more questions. Also, I always like to do an assessment, a software assessment and just an overall assessment of the provider's billing. This will ensure that you don't miss anything that maybe you have spoken about in the consultation, but it wasn't clear, or they didn't go into it at all, and now it is a surprise if you haven't done this assessment because you didn't think it was going on, or you didn't know if something was happening. And the only way for you to have found that out is if you had looked at their software to the beginning. So doing an assessment along with this consultation can be very helpful. So we're going to go through some questions that I think you can ask the provider that will help you get an idea of their needs and their goals. The first question is, what are your top challenges in your billing process? Now, this question will help determine what it is that they need to have done or what they're having a problem with. Most of the time, a provider will come to you, whether it is from the beginning, if they never had a biller, or if they had a previous biller, because they have some type of challenge. So if they are new, they might just not know how to bill at all. So that is the challenge. The billing process, they don't know where to start. They don't even know where to begin. Or they could have been doing the billing themselves, or maybe had another biller who's doing the billing for them, and they either found out that something is going wrong. So you want to know what that challenge is to be able to see if you can actually help them out. The second question you can ask them is, what is their goal for deciding to have an outsourced biller or having a billing company do their billing? And of course, this question is important because they can easily have someone who's in-house doing their billing. But there is a reason that they want you to do their billing and you're not, in-house doing their billing. And you want to find out what they expect from you. This is more of a question to figure out what they're thinking that you're going to bring to the table for them. Again, they could have had an in-house biller, but they chose to have one that is outsourced. Also, you want to find out what was their biggest frustration with their previous biller. So again, like I said before, they might have had a previous biller, and you want to see what it is that they think that biller was doing wrong. What I have noticed is that sometimes providers don't really understand the billing process, and so they would blame the biller for the reason why things are not going right when it wasn't actually the biller's fault. So if you can understand maybe why they cut ties with that biller and not just assume that it was the biller's fault, then you can kind of figure out what's going on or what you would have to deal with if you do take on this client. Then I would ask, how do you submit claims? And how many claims do you submit in a week or in a month? So you do want to know how they submit claims, because maybe they might be a provider who only submit claims by paper. Now, if you submit claims by paper, that is going to take a longer period of time for you to do that. So you need to know how they're submitting claims. Maybe they might have a mixture of electronic and paper. Not all providers submit claims electronically, so you need to remember that. And also you need to keep in mind that maybe they submit claims by paper, but they want to start submitting claims electronically. So then you would have to be the one to figure out how that's going to work. Are you going to use your system? Are they going to use theirs? Do they even have one? All of that. And I'm jumping ahead, but a lot of questions can come from that one. So again, how do they submit claims, whether paper or electronically or both? And how many claims do they submit? Now, this question is a tricky one because if you're not looking actually in the system, sometimes providers could give you a number that's not right. They might say, oh, I don't do that many claims. I only do, a few claims a week, about 20 claims a week. And then you actually get in and start billing and they're sending out tons of claims, which would affect your work and your workflow and all of that stuff. So you want to kind of get a good idea of how much claims they submit in a week or in a month. And of course, this will help you when it comes to pricing as well. So you want to have a good idea of that. Then also you want to know what is their current EHR and practice management system. Now, a practice management system and an EHR, are two different things, or you should know are two different things, because I know there have been times when a provider has told me that they have a specific practice management system. And then when I look further, it's not the practice management portion, it is the EHR portion. So, for example, a provider may say that they have LITech, and LITech has a EHR section, but it also has a billing section. And if that provider doesn't have that portion of it, again, are you going to get it for them? Are you going to use something else? Are you going to use your system? All of this matters. So they do need to be clear about what system they have, and so that you can know what you need in order to serve them correctly. Then you will want to know what payers the provider is contracted and credentialed with, and are there any issues with these payers? So this is a loaded question because it is very important if a provider is contracted or credentialed with payers, because first this has to do with being in network and out of network. Then you want to know, are there any issues? Are they having any problems? Maybe they were not credentialed properly, and so now even after thinking they are credentialed, when they bill, there's a problem. Maybe they're not getting paid. They're getting paid as out of network when it should be in network. All of this could be something that you have to deal with on the back end. And if you don't include this or make it clear that maybe I'm not doing credentialing, or I am doing credentialing, or is it included or not included in my services, all of that is going to be important as far as your work and how you charge. So you need to ask this question, and then you need to look deeper again and see if this is straight, because you want to ask for contracts with these payers. You want to ask for all of those things to just make sure that things are right before you start to bill for this provider, and then you have a headache on your hands. They may also want to get contracted and credentialed with other payers that they're not contracted and credentialed with, and they may think that you're going to automatically do that. But again, you need to make sure that you are clear in letting them know that either this is included or this is going to be additional to the fee that I already charged you. One question that's not asked too often is if the provider has any compliance or auditing issues. Now, this one is very, very important, because again, if you start to bill and these things are happening and they're having a lots of audits and they're not getting paid, or they have to send a lot of medical records, that can be a lot of work. I don't know if you've ever dealt with that before, but I've dealt with a few providers who had not a big audit, but a couple medical records that need to be audited, and it can become a lot of work. So you need to know in advance if they're dealing with that already, because it will help you decide whether or not you want to deal with it. And then you want to know why. Why are you getting so much audits? What payer is auditing you? I know payers are auditing providers more lately, but you do want to know if there's an issue, if something is going wrong. Even with compliance, you want to know about that. There's also a site that I look at that I'm going to put on the screen. When I am thinking about billing for a provider, I go and look to see if their name is on this list, and they might have been having issues with Medicare and they can't bill for Medicare anymore and they're on this list. I can't remember the name quite offhand, but again, I'll put it on the screen. But it's important that you check this list. It's from the OIG, if I'm not mistaken. And it is important that you check this list just to make sure that this provider is cool, because not every provider is up on the up and up. And you just want to make sure that they're not having any compliance or audit issues. And then you would want to ask them, how quickly do they receive payments and what methods of payments do they receive? So if you're one of those medical billing businesses that charge percentage, then you want to know how quickly the provider is getting paid and what methods they are using, because your payment is going to be dependent on the revenue that they bring in. So if they're not getting paid quickly and maybe they're using like paper checks and the provider is the one who has to deposit it and it's going to take long, and all of those issues can affect your payment. So you do want to know how the provider is getting paid, if the provider is open to changing their method, if they're getting paper checks or EOBs, paper EOBs. Are they willing to get electronic remittance advice and EFT, electronic funds transfer? They can get paid quicker and you can get paid quicker. So if you're doing the percentage payments, you don't always have to charge percentage. We talked about pricing in one of the other videos, but there are different ways to charge. Most people use percentage as a way to charge. And if you are, that is an important question for you to ask. So remember that there are many other questions that you will ask the provider within this consultation, but first understanding what their goals and their needs are is very, very important. So these questions should help you start to make a list on what questions you will be asking the providers during these consultations. And remember, you're not only dealing with the providers, you will also be dealing with their staff. So in my next video, we'll be talking about the front desk and how they can help you in your medical billing business. I'll see you in my next one.